Jesus freak here, and must admit that being any sort of a theologian or an influence pusher was honestly not something I ever really had in mind. I started out as a computer programmer, and somehow a combination of events turned me into what I am. Now, I say somehow. We all know what that somehow is. Anyway, I was always, as a kid, trying to be like, well, you know, I liked watching cartoons on weekday afternoons so long as I was able to do so. You know, back then it was reruns of Scooby-Doo and Filmation Ghostbusters on Channel 3 out of Syracuse. And later, the radical thing to do to watch was Ninja Turtles, the 1987 cartoon. The first I got to see of Ninja Turtles was the first movie from 1990. I saw it at a drive-in theater in Minetto, which it's about midway between Oswego, New York, and Fulton, New York. Hence, the theater was called Midway Drive-In. Right? It still exists. They got a website. They got a Facebook page. They keep up with the times. But, you know, this place, you know, they had speakers in the lot. If you didn't have an AM, FM radio, you could hang the speaker in your window. And if you did, you could tune in over AM or you could tune in over FM and get stereo. So I watched Ninja Turtles there with my family. And a couple years later, I got to watch the 1987 cartoon. Used to have a lot of it on tape, actually. And later I bought a lot of the DVDs and no longer can find most of them. But I had like the DVDs for about the first half of the series. Now, this series kept going until 1996. And then it came to an end. And I was looking for another show to watch. And stumbled upon a show called Sailor Moon because I had a classmate. Her name was Marin. And she was obsessed with Sailor Moon. She kind of stopped getting obsessed after I got obsessed with it after watching it on Channel 29 here in Western New York. Later was on USA Network. I used to tape it off USA at someone else's house. And when it later aired on Cartoon Network, while we had only the basic channels, so I taped it off Fox 29 and managed eventually to get the whole series as far as it existed in 1998, which was 82 episodes. Not as long a series as, say, Ninja Turtles was almost 200. But then I found out, there's more of it in Japan, and I started finding out about fan subs and bootleg anime releases and such. And me being a computer programmer, I actually, about 22 years ago, I wrote a program that allowed me to display and edit these subtitles on my old computer, which I actually just ran MS-DOS, didn't even run Windows. And some of my experiments using this program were my first forays into fan subbing about 20 years ago. And when I got a video capture card for my computer back in 2003, I did some actual experiments, which evolved into me doing subtitles of, there was a live action Sailor Moon series in Japan in 2003, and I went on to work on a number of projects. I'd basically gone from project to project to project to project, kind of never really lasting on anything. Some of my projects were the last 34 episodes of Sailor Moon. I only got about 7 of them done. Pokemon, I think I only did about 10 or 11 episodes and a couple movies. The 2003 Sailor Moon, I did 5 episodes. Kamen Rider 555, I did, I think, 5 episodes with someone else. Kamen Rider O's, I did 3 episodes. So I didn't have a lot of luck working on anything. So a couple of my friends had been working on a series called Detective Conan. And they were working on fixing up some of the older episodes that had been not very well subtitled. And then I found out that the group that was currently handling the newer episodes had decided to call it quits because they had been scared off by a letter from the company that had the legal rights but had only done the first 123 episodes. And I said, you know what? I want to see if I can handle this. Didn't really have to. My friends that had already been working on it and I wound up working on it together, and we basically continued to work on it for a couple years until another company took over the new episodes. That company's Crunchyroll, by the way. I'm sure you've heard of it. So we no longer had to worry about that and could just focus on fixing up the older episodes. A lot of them still are very poorly translated. And actually, I'm still working on it. But it's the project that I've had the most success with. And that's one of the reasons I still work on it, because I'm still able to do it. I've actually been thinking of trying to see if I could, go legit with a project for that hole in the middle where neither the old company, Funimation, nor Crunchyroll has handled it. Because I think there was a company that considered it and said, there's too much here, and it's going to be too much work to sort everything out. I'm probably the only one who'd even consider it. Anyway, that's where most of my influence seems to come from my subtitling work. And yes, I do still do programming now and then. Most of my stuff focuses on older computers. Stuff I grew up using and can understand pretty well. Just like old cars. So older computers are easier to comprehend. And as for my Bible bit, when I moved in with my family, there were a lot of times when I had only, I had nothing to do, and all I had was some reading material. That reading material was a book from the Jehovah Witnesses called My Book of Bible Stories. It's a yellow and red book. They don't make it anymore. It's still available now and then on eBay. And a King James Bible. That's all I had. I have to say I tore through the Bible simply out of boredom. And since I did a lot of that, digging through the Bible just because I was bored out of my mind, I picked up a few things. And I still do it sometimes when I get bored, just tear through the Bible. There's worse things I guess I could do. About 20 years ago, I made my first attempt at trying to translate the Bible again myself just to see what I could pull off. And I was using a copy of the Latin Vulgate, and I believe I translated about 3 chapters of John. And the results came out sounding very similar to the King James Version. Now, I never actually learned Latin. So you might ask, how am I able to handle biblical Latin when I don't even know the language? Well, I took French and Spanish in high school, and they're descendant languages of Latin, and sometimes it's very obvious. And a lot of Latin words have made it into English in some form or another, too. Basically, I was reconstructing Latin out of its descendants. And it was this that I was translating. Honestly, that's as close as I could ever get to translating the ancient biblical languages. I don't know any Hebrew. I don't know any Aramaic. I don't know any Greek. But I was able to reconstruct enough Latin. And if I needed to push in the right direction, I could look at the Challoner New Testament, and that's a literal, but not too literal, translation of the Vulgate. Now, the Douay-Rheims Bible was also a translation of the Vulgate, and you find a lot of Challoners are called Douay-Rheims and not. There's actually ways you can tell, and my favorite is to look at Isaiah 5:1, where I can't remember the exact wording, but it's pretty similar to, if I were to translate it word for word, the second half of Isaiah 5:1 would translate to, "A vineyard is made to my beloved, in Horn the son of oil." I use this as an example why you can't always translate perfectly literally. Horn the son of oil is itself, even the Latin phrase is an example of why you can't do this. Because Hebrew is a very idiomatic language. So if you try to always translate it straight, you're going to wind up with a lot of Darmok and Jalada Tanagra mistakes. And even if you translate Greek, which is a lot more like English, you might occasionally wind up with the good arms mistake, which is my term for if you translate an idiomatic expression too literally. Because once I actually did, it was a Japanese phrase, uregai, which means I'm skilled or I'm good at what I'm doing, but literally translates as arms are good. Anyway, I got into this, and my experiences with this kind of thing and that kind of thing kind of cross-pollinated. My computer experience helped with my anime experience. My anime experience helped with my translation overall, which helped with my Bible stuff. And it all came together. But they say, all the different things you do and experience are what make you. I definitely think that's true of me. Jesus freak out.